Today on Stamp TV, I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful gift tag using the new poster board Christmas stamp set by Becky Oehlers. This pretty tag can also be used as a Christmas ornament or holiday decoration for the home. Let me show you the tools and products you need to make this project. First, you're going to need some of the stamps from the new poster board Christmas, and I'm using one of the wreath stamps along with the little stamp that has the dots on it, and that is the berries that go into the wreath. I'm also going to use the greeting that says Merry Christmas to you. And then I've also grabbed the to and from stamp from the new Beyond Baskets by Melanie Menchinger. This is also a great set for making cards and gifts, and I'll be showing that to you a little bit later this week. You're going to need some ink pads, and I am using the Gina Designs Cherry Red ink. I'm also going to use some of the VersaMark ink. Along with the VersaMark, I'm going to be using some of the super fine detail gold embossing powder and an embossing magic pad. This pad removes any kind of static on your card surface and also any oils or debris that may get on the card prior to you embossing it, and this way embossing powder will only stick where you want it to stick. Here I have a couple of buttons. I have some of the Gina Designs black onyx buttons, and I have one of the Gina Designs Cherry Red buttons. You're going to need some dies or punches, or you can use your electronic cutter. The dies that I'm using are by Spellbinders. These are the standard circles dies, and then I also have one of their scalloped dies. You're going to need some cardstock, and the colors that I'm using today are the Gina Designs black onyx, the cherry red, and some of the ivory. You're also going to need some scissors and some adhesive. So to begin, I'm going to grab a piece of ivory cardstock and I'm going to stamp a wreath. And I'm going to use our cherry red ink to do that. And you can see I didn't clean the stamp very well. Plus the cherry red will stain the clear stamps a little bit. I don't mind that so much because then I can see where I put them and I don't tend to lose them on my desktop. So I don't mind that little bit of staining. But Ultra Clean Stamp Cleaner will clean that off very well. Okay. So I'm going to stamp that onto this piece of ivory cardstock. And then I'm going to stamp it again, but this time I'm going to stamp it in the opposite direction. Now, of course, it doesn't matter because once you cut it out, you can just flip it around, but I want to show you what that looks like side by side. So either direction is fine to use depending on which way you like the wreath to go. You can see one way I have the thicker part up at the top and the other way I have the more delicate part at the top. Either way will make a beautiful wreath. I'm not sure how Becky intended that to be, but I like it both ways. I'm also going to stamp this to and from stamp in the middle of one of these wreaths. So I'll choose this one for that. And I'm also going to do that in the cherry red. And I'll stamp that right about here, like that. So that will be one side of my tag. Now I'm going to do a little bit of embossing, and I'm going to do some stamping with VersaMark. Before I do that, I want to make sure that I use this embossing magic pad over the surface of the wreath because I only want that embossing powder to stick to the little berries that I'm going to stamp on this wreath. So there. Okay, and my next step is going to be to grab this greeting. Now you can do this in two parts or you can do this all at once. You can do the wreath berries first and then you can go ahead and stamp the second part and emboss them in between, or you can stamp everything with VersaMark and then emboss all at once. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start by putting the berries on. Let's do those first. So VersaMark's a little bit harder to see on the stamp, so you just really want to make sure that you get it inked up real well. And because these are clear stamps, they are very easy to see where you're positioning things. So excuse my head if it gets in the way here. Give a nice even amount of pressure there and pull that up. So I've stamped the berries, and now I'm going to ink up this stamp in VersaMark. I kind of like it when my stamps are stained a little bit, because then I can see through and make sure that the greeting is straight, even if I'm using something like a clear ink like VersaMark. So I'll stamp that right there. Now I'm going to use a little scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to sprinkle this embossing powder all over the surface there for the berries and for the greeting. And now you can see that I've got color now on those berries and on that greeting. And if you get any embossing powder where you don't want it, you can use your finger and just get rid of it. And then once you've gotten most of it off, you can just blow the excess away. Okay, I'm going to put this back into my jar, and then I'm going to emboss it. It's pretty easy to see when the gold powder has turned shiny. That's when you know that it's done, and you can move to the next area. And as your heat tool heats up a little bit more, it'll go a little bit quicker. Make sure that that's all nice and embossed. And you can see now this beautiful shine that you have in there. You see all that shiny gold? It's so pretty. So now we're going to do the same thing with this one, but we're only going to stamp the berries on it. And remember, this frame is in the opposite direction, so you want to make sure that you stamp the berries in the right direction. There we go. And now we'll add that embossing powder onto the berries. These are really fun to make. You can mass produce these. Make a whole bunch of the wreaths first, cut them all out, and then you can kind of do assembly line assembly of these ornaments or tags, depending on what you're going to use them for. If you didn't want to use this as a Christmas tag, you could put a picture on this side instead, or you could stamp another wreath on this side and put a different greeting. Okay, so now I'm going to emboss these berries on this side. And you can see they're all coming up nice and gold and shiny. It's so pretty. Just that little touch of shimmer in there from that embossing powder is so elegant. I did want to show you one more tool. I'm not going to use it today, but I wanted to show it to you just in case you were starting early on your holiday gifts and cards. I wanted to show you this VersaMarker. If you've never seen a VersaMarker, it works exactly the same way as the pad. So you can take this fine tip end on the VersaMarker, you can see that over here, and you can write names in here. So if I wanted to make this gift to Tom from Gina, you could actually write the names in there and sprinkle that gold embossing powder, and then the names can be embossed as well. So that's a fun tool to pick up. It's also really nice for areas where you may have a beautiful pine tree stamp, but it doesn't have snow on it. You can color a little bit of VersaMarker over that pine tree, and then you can add some white embossing powder and add snow to different parts of your cards and projects. So this is a real fun tool, and I just wanted to point that out. My next step is going to be to cut out these two wreaths, and I'm going to do that using my Cuttlebug. Let's straighten that out a little bit. There we go. And you're going to need an A and a B plate. And then we're going to start with the first one. We're going to use the smaller of those two plain circles and line that up. I love this stamp because it is very decorative, but it fits into a basic circle cut. So that's just so nice to not have to have a specific die to make this particular image work. I really like that. Okay, so there's my first one, and I'll put that one aside. And then I'm going to cut out my second one with that same die. There we go. And put the C plate on top. Make sure that looks straight. And cut. Now we're going to do a little bit more die cutting before we're done here. So there's the second one. I'll put that one aside as well. Now I want to go with the next size die, and I want to cut out 2 pieces of black because the black is going to be a mat for my tag, ivory tag pieces. So we'll cut that one of those, and one more of those. And you can keep the other little piece of that black for when you want to cut a small greeting tag or something else, so it won't waste any cardstock. So there, now I have these black circles that are going to layer with my ivory ones. And then I have one more piece I want to die cut, and I only need one. This is the Cherry Red, and I'm going to cut a scalloped circle out. And again, for those of you who have electronic cutters, like the Silhouette, you can go, the Cameo or the Portrait, you can go on to the Silhouette's web page and find all kinds of scalloped circles and fancy circles and plain circles, so you can cut these out on your electronic cutter. And of course, there's a wide variety of punches out there on the market that will do this as well. So this is the layer that I'm going to use right here, like this. Okay. So now my next step is going to be to adhere these pieces together. I'm going to do that with a little bit of mono adhesive. And the Cherry Red piece is going to be on both sides. So I only needed one of those. That's going to have a black piece on either side of it. You don't really need to cut 2 of those. So there's one, and I'll put one on the back. There we go. Now I'm just going to kind of wrinkle that little piece right there, so that I know which one I'm using to make sure that my image is straight on both sides. So I'm going to use that one, just wrinkle it a little tiny bit. You won't see that once I put a button on top of that, which is what I'm going to do. But I want to make sure that it's straight on both sides, so when it's hanging, it looks the same on both sides. So there is side 1, right? And there, over here. Here's my other piece. That will be side 2. I could probably use a little bit more tape under here, so let me put a little bit under here. There we go. So side 1, side 2. Now I'm going to take a paper punch here. I happen to have the Crocodile. You can use any punch for this, but you want to make sure that you use something that can get through all those layers. I'm going to flip that around so I can see, there we go, what end that's coming out of, and I'm going to just cut, get in there, punch a little hole right at the top here. There we go. So now I have a little hole there. And it doesn't have to be absolutely perfectly centered, because the buttons are going to kind of position that string exactly where you want it. Here I'm using some of the black baker's twine, and I'm going to just cut a piece. My first piece is going to be for hanging the tag. So I'm going to just take the top here and make a little knot of how long I want that to go. And then I'm just going to trim off the excess. I guess I didn't need anywhere near that much. So there is my tag part. Now I'm going to add 2 buttons. I want to add one on the front and one on the back, whichever you think is the front or the back. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to do the bow on this part here, the Merry Christmas to You. So I'm going to grab another piece of twine, and I'm going to start by looping through one side, and then I'm going to go through one side, one hole of the black, and then I'm going to come back through the other side. And just because a button has 4 buttonholes does not mean you have to use them all. You can just use 2, and that's what I'm going to do. Sometimes I like to cut before I feed it through. It makes it a little bit easier to see. There we go. Okay. So now I have, let's see if I can straighten this out for you. Okay, you can see what that looks like there. It's going through one and through the other. And I'm going to slip this loop in between those 2 buttons, like that. And now I'm going to pull everything nice and tight. Make sure I have it nice and tight. And it's okay if this isn't exactly attached just yet. You just want to get it started into a little knot. Now that you have a little knot there, you can kind of shimmy that down into position where you have a part of it on the back and a part of it on the front. And you can move it to where you want it. And once you've got it in a good position, then really tighten that string and make it into a little knot or a little bow, like that. And then I'm going to cut off the excess here. And then there is my pretty little tag. That's one side, and there is the other side. Make packages of these tags to give to teachers, friends, and family as gifts during the holiday season, and let the Poster Board Christmas stamp set help you wrap up the perfect Christmas.